If you're living in Versailles or near Versailles and you have a child between the ages of 2.5 and 6, and you're looking to start them in a school that has a bilingual program, French and English, then I'd like you to listen to my review of my daughter's school. I think it's one of the best schools in all of France, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, before I tell you the name of the school, let me just tell you there are two schools at Versailles that are unrelated to each other with exactly the same name. So it's a little confusing. The school that my daughter goes to is next to the train station called the Gare de Montreuil, and it's headed by Véronique Sudoir. Her last name is Sudoir, Sodoir. That's the school you want your children to go to if you like hearing what I have to say. And I want to tell you they've been here in Versailles for over 30 years. And they are a Montessori school, but before you say, oh, Montessori, I don't think they're strong on academics, let me tell you what I'm going to tell you is going to change your view on that. Because in 1 year, my daughter went from hardly knowing her alphabet to reading. And she started at age 4, and by age 5, before she started Grande Section, she was reading very complicated sentences. You know, the flock of seagulls threw Bill in the ocean. I mean, that's not an easy thing to read in English. She was also doing arithmetic. When she arrived at age 4, she could hardly count to 30 in English, couldn't count to anything in French. She was counting to 100 in French and English and doing addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Mommy, 3 times 10 is 30. And I would say yes. And I didn't spend any time with her at all. The name of the school is École Bilingue Maria Montessori. And like I said, there are 2 schools by that name in Versailles. You want the one that's headed by Véronique Sudoir and is located right next to the Gare de Montreuil train station. There are 3 aspects of the school I absolutely love. One of them is, of course, the bilingual aspect of the school. I think it's an excellent program for getting your kids to speak both French and English. If they come into the school speaking only English, they will end up learning French. And if they come into the school speaking only French, they will end up learning English, for sure, very quickly at that. The second reason why I love this school is because it has a very strong focus on academics. And I'm going to get into that as well. And the third aspect is that they are just a wonderful school in terms of teaching your child to be proud and happy, proud of themselves and who they are, happy, self-sufficient, and they do amazing extracurricular activities. They go on ski trips. My daughter has a pony class that runs throughout the year. It's not just a one-off. It runs all throughout the years. They go to a 6-day ski trip in the Alps. She has music class. I mean, it's really an amazing program. And the school does start at age 2.5. It goes all the way to age 11. I think they leave at college. Okay. But I am going to be talking about my experience, which is really the program that starts at age 2.5 and goes through to age 6. So with that, let me start by talking to you about its bilingual program. So let me tell you what's so special and what's so different about my daughter's school for bilingual education. First of all, at age 2.5 and at 3, if you put your child at those ages at the school, they will get 50-50 exposed to French and English during the day. At age 4 and 5, they get put into either an Anglophone section or a Francophone section. That doesn't mean that they're only learning English or only learning French. It means that they learn to read in one core language first, and then they'll catch up with the other language when they're 6 years old and entering first grade, or what the French call CP. So if you are a French-speaking parent with a French-speaking child, your child will have to pass this test to be in the Anglophone section. But and in my case, if your child is like my child, she didn't know any French at all when she arrived at age 4, she would have had to pass a test to be in the Francophone section, which she would have failed because she could only say bonjour monsieur, bonjour madame. But the basic idea is you learn to read faster if you can learn to recognize the words as you're sounding them out. So you need to know the language in order to do that. And so if you know French and you don't have enough English to be able to read English, you'll be put in the Francophone section. If you don't have enough French to read French, then you'll put in the Anglophone section. And then when you're at CP, you'll catch up with the other language. And this works really beautifully. The reason why it works so well is because your child gets to be in a completely single language environment with single language instruction for a lot of hours in each language. So what does that mean? Let me tell you what that means. There are two components of it. First, single language environment. Your child, when they're in the English portion of their day, all the instruction is in English. All the teachers speak English. So the teacher, the main teacher, and also the teaching assistant speaks English. There's no French instruction at all. When they're in the French portion of the day, your child will be taught by a French teacher and a French assistant, and all of the instruction education is in French. This is really important because there are other schools in Versailles and around in the western suburbs that will tell you something that sounds good, but it's really a marketing ploy. It's this idea that you can have a French teacher with an English-speaking assistant and kill two birds with one stone and have a bilingual education program. Let me tell you, if the teacher is French-speaking, then the instruction education is in French, and you have a French class, and they're just going to have a few words dangling in their ears that are English, and they're not going to learn anything in English. The French children end up bonding with the French teacher. The English children, English-speaking children, end up bonding with the English assistant, and because the instruction education is not in English, they don't, the French students don't learn any English, and the English-speaking students, in fact, don't receive any English, education. They don't learn to read in English or their subjects in English. So you want to kind of stay away from the kind of dual language environments. It's definitely not what I wanted for my daughter, and I don't think in my personal opinion, it's not a truly bilingual program. At this school, you're in either an English class or a French class, and I think that's important. The second aspect of this bilingual program that is so strong, the sheer number of hours you can have in both languages. My daughter's in the Anglophone section, which means that from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., 9h, 14h, 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's a total of 5 hours a day or 20 hours a week she is receiving class in English, in a completely English-speaking education environment. Okay? From 2 to 4, she's in French, and I can, if I want to, take her home at 4 o'clock. I choose not to. I choose to let her stay for a total of 4.5 hours from 2 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., 14h à 18h30 in French, so that she can have 4.5 hours a day, 4 days a week in French. That gives her a total of 20 hours a week in English and 18 hours a week in French. And let me tell you, it's absolutely great. She's completely understanding French right now. She's starting to speak French, and she's only been here a year and a half. And I'm confident that after another year, she will be fluently speaking French as well. She's understanding more than she speaks right now, but I can leave her with a French-only speaking child, and she gets everything that the child says. So it's a really great program for those who are considering coming in from the outside and with an English-only speaking child, never been exposed to any French like my child was. They will learn French very quickly. At the same time, if you have a child that is mostly French-speaking or only French-speaking, you want them to learn English, let me tell you, this program allows you to have up to 32 hours of English a week if your child is in the Anglophone section. If your child is not in the Anglophone section, they can have 20 hours of English a week if they're in the Francophone section. That is a lot of English. There is no other program, not the international school in Sèvres, not the Bouc program, not the Saint-Germain-en-Laye program, not Blanche de Castille, no other program. I dare you. It's a challenge. I am giving you right now, challenge you, call any international program in all the western suburbs, all of Paris, even all of France, and find me one that will give you from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. education in French, and then an additional up to 20 hours a week for your child in English. The sheer number of hours that you can have in a completely single language environment, either French or English, for both languages at this school is really exceptional. And the program, you can kind of tailor how many hours in each language your child gets. It's built so you can tailor it. The core hours are 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, but they also have an English speaking morning, Wednesday morning from 9:30 to 12 that you can add, and then they have les ateliers du soir, which is from 4 to 6:30, and you can choose the language you want your child to be exposed to during les ateliers du soir. Do you want them to be with the English-speaking teachers or the French-speaking teachers? And that's how the program works. It's really wonderful. Now, I get a lot of questions. A lot of times people say, why didn't you just stick your child in a French school? Why not that? So let me answer that question, because a lot of people say, but she's in France, she should be in a French school, she'd learn French quicker. And I don't believe she would learn French quicker, actually. I have been speaking to a lot of mothers on Facebook forums that come in with children who don't know any French and never exposed to any French, like my child, and they take years to learn French. And I think part of the problem is that they're so miserably unhappy at French-only schools, which is not the case for my daughter. My daughter is flourishing at the school. She loves France and she loves the school because of its program. Let me tell you also why I didn't put her into a completely French speaking program. I didn't put her into a 100% French school because she didn't know any French. She wasn't exposed to any French prior to coming to France. She arrived here and she was able to say, bonjour, monsieur, bonjour, madame. And when I got on to the Facebook pages with the English-speaking moms of Versailles and the English-speaking moms of France, I started reading about other women's experiences with their children who were also age 4 and 5, and their children were absolutely miserable. Emotionally, psychologically, they felt like they were spending all day in a language they absolutely knew nothing of. And I didn't want that for my child. I didn't want her to be miserable. And then the other thing was that they were behind. The age 4 and age 5 is the age when you learn your letters and you learn how to read. And those children didn't know French, so they didn't know how to speak French. They didn't know how to understand French, so they didn't learn to read in French, and they were just struggling to speak it and understand it, which is the work of a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, right? And since there was no English education for those children, they also didn't learn to read in English. So they were behind in English and behind in French, and they started their first grade, or CP, behind in both. I didn't want that for my child. I wanted my child to be in a program that allowed her, by the time she was 6 years old, to really have both languages, to learn what she would have learned if she had continued in her English education in America, here in France, but also learn what she needs to learn in French, and be on the same level, or at the same level as a French child who's age 6 when she starts CP. And that's exactly what this program allows you to do. Is it a little bit more expensive than the other schools? Yes, it probably is. But I think it's worth it. When my daughter arrived here at age 4, I didn't put her in les ateliers du soir. She actually was just in the regular 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. School. And that might have been a little bit of a mistake, because I decided not to put her in the evening program because she was 4 years old, and I thought the day would be too long for her to be there until 6:30. And as a result, she only had 8 hours of French a week that first year. When at the end of the year, I wasn't satisfied with her level of French. She really couldn't understand it, and she couldn't speak it. So in the second year, after the summer, of course the school is closed for the summer, I put her in les ateliers du soir, and that increased the amount of French she had to 18 hours a week. And she hasn't even been there. She hasn't even completed the year, and she's already understanding French. I think pretty much fluently. And not maybe if I stuck her in front of a television show or a radio program, maybe she wouldn't understand it that much fluently. But she can certainly play with a child, as I said, and completely understand the other child in French, and she's starting to speak it. And I am confident that after another one of these years, she will be speaking French fluently. So if she, someone who absolutely doesn't know any French at all, can learn French in 1 year of exposure to French, just 18 hours, because I have to remind you, she's in English class from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then after she comes home, she's with me, and I only speak English to her. So she's really only in an English, she really hears only English. And she hears French just those 18 hours. If she can learn French exposed to 18 hours, imagine what your child can. Of course, your child is going to learn English exposed to English 20 hours a week if they're in the Francophone section. And if they've got enough English to be in the Anglophone section, and you're also adding the Wednesday and the evening program, they get 32 hours of English a week. They will be absolutely more than fluent at the end of a year or two. So, I think it's worth it. It's worth to spend that little bit of extra money and get them that boost, that bilingual boost. And like I said, the academics at this program, at this school, they are so strong. They're going to be ahead in French, ahead in English, and ahead of the game. And the kids just love their teachers. They love the school. I just mentioned a few things. I mentioned the ski trip and, the pony riding class and the music class, but they also have theater plays once or twice a year. They recite poetry. They go out. They have some program with, I don't know if it's a governmental organization, but they go out and learn how to make compost. They have nature programs, and they go on field trips. The older children go to museums. It's really a wonderful thing. The last thing I want to mention is a little story I want to give you. When my daughter leaves the school at the end of the day, she screams, "Je vous aime, Véronique. I love you, Teacher Jean-Marie." She says to her French teacher in French, "I love you." And she says to her English teacher in English, "I love you." She is missing the school, missing her friends when she's at home with me on vacation. She learned so much, and she's curious, yes. She's a curious nature, yes. But I feel she learns to want how to learn and to want to learn. The school doesn't just teach you academics. It teaches you how to want to learn more and how to learn. So I just think I can't say enough good things about this school. And the other parents at the school, the teachers, you become a community. You know each other. There are people from everywhere, from China, from Japan, from Spain. Of course, most of the people are French. But, it's a real amazing little group that you become a part of. And you don't want to let it go. I'm going to be so sad when she turns 11 and we're going to have to leave the school. I'm telling you, it's worth it.